The stars did not shine in silence. They whispered. Across the endless void, beyond the reach of light and time, ancient civilizations rose and fell like sparks in a storm. Empires stretched across galaxies, carved their names into the fabric of existence, and vanished, leaving behind only echoes, ruins, and warnings etched into the bones of the universe. Every species that reached the stars eventually discovered the same truth. They were not the first, and they would not be the last. Among the oldest races, those who had witnessed the birth of systems and the death of suns, there existed stories. Not records, not history. Stories. Fragments of something that had been deliberately erased. In the deepest archives, locked behind genetic seals and forbidden codes, there were references to a species unlike any other, a race that had burned too brightly, expanded too quickly, fought too fiercely, a race that had frightened even the ancients. They were called humanity. No one spoke the name openly anymore. It existed only in corrupted data clusters, in half-deleted inscriptions, and in the quiet warnings passed from elder to apprentice in dimly lit chambers. They were relentless. They did not stop. They could not be contained. Some claimed humanity had destroyed itself in a war so catastrophic it tore entire systems apart. Others believed something far worse, that the galaxy had united against them, that they had been erased, not defeated, erased. Every trace of their existence purged, every record burned, every world cleansed, as if they had never existed at all. And yet, the silence they left behind was too loud, because even after 1,000 years, even after 1,000,000, the fear remained. It lingered in the hesitation of commanders, in the caution of explorers, in the unspoken rule that some regions of space were better left untouched. No one could explain why, but every species felt it. Like a shadow stretching across time itself, waiting, watching, remembering, and far beyond the borders of known space. Something stirred. Long before the current empires carved their dominion across the stars, there were whispers, fragments of a truth no one wanted to remember. The elder species did not speak of humanity. They avoided the subject entirely, not out of ignorance, but out of fear. In the oldest academies of the Xyloran Council, where knowledge from 1,000 civilizations was preserved, entire sections of history had been sealed. Access required unanimous approval from beings who had lived for millennia. Even then, what remained was incomplete, corrupted, deliberately fractured. One surviving fragment described humanity as adaptable beyond prediction. Another labeled them strategically unstable. A third, barely legible, contained a single phrase repeated over and over. They do not stop. No context, no explanation, just that warning. Across the galaxy, different species told different versions of the same story. The insectoid Varine believed humanity had consumed entire biospheres, stripping worlds down to their cores in an endless hunger for expansion. The crystalline Elithari claimed humans were masters of war who could turn the simplest tools into weapons of unimaginable destruction. The synthetic Korth recorded humanity as an anomaly, biological, yet operating with the cold efficiency of machines. None of these accounts matched perfectly, and that was the most terrifying part, because despite the contradictions, every version ended the same way. Silence. Total, absolute silence. No survivors. No records. No trace. As if something had decided that humanity should not be remembered. In modern times, the dominant power in the galaxy, the Dominion of Raal, dismissed these stories as primitive superstition. To them, history was clear, structured, and controlled. There had been no humanity, no great war, no erased species, only myths created by lesser civilizations to explain the unknown. And yet, within the Dominion's most restricted archives, buried beneath layers of classified data, there were files that did not belong, files that no one could access. Files that no one could delete. Every attempt to erase them failed. Every system that tried malfunctioned, as if the data itself refused to disappear. And in those forbidden files, a single phrase remained intact, unchanged, uncorrupted, waiting. If they return, we will not survive. For centuries, it was ignored. For centuries, it was dismissed. For centuries, the galaxy convinced itself that humanity was nothing more than a ghost story, a myth meant to frighten young civilizations, a relic of a past that never truly existed, until the day something appeared at the edge of known space. Not a fleet, not an empire, just a signal, old, faint, and impossible to identify. At first, it was dismissed as background noise. Then it repeated, again, and again, and again. A pattern began to form. Ancient code, a language no modern system recognized, but deep within the Dominion's oldest archives. Something responded, decoding, translating, remembering, and when the final sequence was understood, the message was simple, cold, unmistakable. We are still here. At the farthest edge of the Dominion of Raal, where mapped space dissolved into uncertainty, the anomaly was first detected. It wasn't dramatic. No explosions, no distortions in space-time, no signs of invasion, just a signal, faint, repeating, ancient. At Outpost K-47, a remote listening station orbiting a dying star, the duty officer almost ignored it. Signals like this appeared all the time, cosmic noise, drifting debris transmissions, the occasional lost colony beacon. But this one was different. It didn't degrade. It didn't drift. It persisted. Run it through deep analysis. The officer ordered. The station's AI hesitated. That alone was unusual. Processing. It responded slowly. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Across the station, systems began to flicker. Old subsystems, long considered obsolete, activated without command. Archived linguistic matrices began pulling data from sealed sectors. Something inside the system was recognizing the signal. Translation complete. The AI finally said. The officer leaned forward. Display it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen lit up. A single line of text. No symbols. No distortion. Clear. Perfect. Ancient. We are humanity. Silence filled the room. The officer felt something cold coil in his chest. That's not possible, someone whispered. Before anyone could respond, the signal changed, expanded, strengthened. It was no longer a message. It was a broadcast. Across every Dominion relay, every military channel, every civilian network, the transmission spread like wildfire. And then came the second line. Short, sharp, unmistakable. Surrender or be destroyed. Panic didn't come immediately. Confusion did. At first, the Dominion High Command dismissed it as a prank. Some rogue faction using ancient code to provoke a reaction. Impossible language. Impossible claim. Impossible threat. Humanity was a myth. A dead story buried in forgotten time. There was no enemy. There was nothing to fear. So they sent a single ship. Not a fleet. Not an armada. Just one. The warship Vakesh, a dreadnought-class vessel equipped with weapons capable of annihilating entire colonies, was dispatched to investigate. Its captain, Admiral Serac, had fought in dozens of campaigns. He had crushed rebellions, erased pirate factions, and enforced the dominions will across 100 systems. To him, this was routine, a minor disturbance, a waste of time. As the Vakesh approached the coordinates of the signal, long-range sensors finally picked something up. A fleet, small, primitive. The ships were crude, angular hulls, exposed plating, visible weapon mounts. They lacked the sleek energy signatures of modern vessels. No advanced shielding, no quantum distortion drives. They looked old, outdated, pathetic. Laughter echoed across the bridge. This is what triggered a system-wide alert. One officer scoffed. Scrap metal and ghosts. Another added. Admiral Serac allowed himself a thin smile. Open a channel. He ordered. The transmission connected instantly. Too instantly. Before Serac could speak, the response came. Not distorted. Not delayed. Perfect. And spoken in a voice that carried no emotion. No hesitation. No fear. You were warned. The bridge fell silent. Serac's expression hardened. You are addressing the Dominion of Raal. Identify yourselves immediately. There was a brief pause. Then the voice returned. Calm, cold, certain. We already did. On the main display, the unknown fleet moved. Not forward, not aggressively, just shifting, repositioning, perfect formation. Every ship aligned with mathematical precision. Weapons began to charge, but they didn't glow with energy. They didn't hum with power. They remained silent, still, waiting. And for the first time in his long career, Admiral Serac felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Not doubt, not uncertainty. Something deeper, something instinctive, something ancient. Fear. He clenched his jaw. Target their lead vessel, he commanded. End this. The Vakesh powered its weapons. Energy surged. Target locks engaged. The enemy ships did not react, did not scatter, did not retreat. They held position, as if they already knew the outcome. Fire. The first shot never reached its target, because the moment the Dominion fired, humanity moved. The shot should have ended it. A concentrated beam from the Vakesh, capable of vaporizing capital ships, tore through space with blinding intensity. It never hit, because the human fleet wasn't there anymore. They didn't jump. They didn't warp. They moved, instantly, as if space itself had been around them. Impossible, one officer gasped. Before the sentence could finish, the human ship surged forward. No hesitation, no warning, just speed, unnatural speed. They split into formation, precise, surgical, flawless. Not a single movement wasted, not a single ship out of alignment. Tracked them. Admiral Serac barked. Targeting system scrambled, failed, recalibrated, failed again. They're too fast. They're inside minimum range. How? The bridge erupted into chaos, and then the first Dominion ship died. It wasn't an explosion. It was silence. One of the escort cruisers simply went dark. No warning. No distress call. Its shields collapsed instantly, overwhelmed by a barrage of solid projectiles, kinetic slugs moving at speeds that defied calculation. Projectile weapons, someone shouted in disbelief. That's pre-Empire technology. Another ship followed. This time, the death was violent. A missile, crude in design, almost laughably primitive, slammed into its core. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then the entire vessel folded inward, its structure collapsing under internal detonation before erupting into a cloud of molten debris. They are bypassing shields. That's not possible. They are not using energy signatures. We can't track them. The human fleet moved like predators, not charging blindly, hunting. Each ship selected a target, executed its attack, and shifted position before retaliation could begin. Every move was calculated, every strike lethal. No wasted fire, no hesitation. Admiral Serac gripped the edge of his command console. Return fire. All weapons. Saturate the field. The Vakesh unleashed everything. Energy beams, plasma bursts, area of effect detonations designed to wipe entire fleets. The void lit up with destruction, and yet the humans were untouched. They slipped between attacks like shadows, like they already knew where every shot would land. They are predicting us, an officer whispered. No, Serac said, his voice tight. They've already learned us. Another impact. The Vakesh shuddered violently. Warning alarm screamed across the bridge. Hull breach on Deck 7. Internal systems failing. How did they get through the armor? Serac's eyes snapped to the display. A human vessel had closed the distance. Too close. Its design was brutal. No elegance, no wasted structure. A weapon, not a ship. Its forward cannons fired. Not energy, not plasma. Metal, dense, accelerated, unstoppable. The rounds tore through the Vakesh like paper. Layer after layer of armor shredded. Bulkheads collapsed. Systems died. This can't be happening, someone muttered. The Dominion had ruled for thousands of years. They had faced countless enemies. None had ever done this. None had ever come close. Admiral, the tactical officer shouted, we're losing control of the ship. Serac didn't respond. He was staring at the human fleet, at their movements, at their precision, at the cold, calculated efficiency of their attack. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't luck. This was mastery. Send a distress signal, he said quietly. No one moved. Now! The signal went out. A single message transmitted across Dominion space. Not a command, not a strategy, a warning. And then the bridge exploded. The battle lasted less than 30 minutes. When it ended, there were no Dominion ships left, only debris, silence, and the human fleet, still intact, still in formation, as if nothing had happened. Across the galaxy, the distress signal echoed, repeating, spreading, unstoppable, and with it came a realization that shattered centuries of certainty. The myths were real. The erased history had returned, and humanity was not weak, was not extinct, was not forgotten. Humanity was back, and this time they were unstoppable. The distress signal did not fade. It multiplied. Across every relay network, every military channel, every civilian broadcast system within the Dominion of Raal, the final transmission of the Vakesh echoed without end. Fragments of panic, broken commands, and one final, chilling realization. We are under attack. Bye. The message cut there. It didn't need to finish. Everyone already knew. At the heart of the Dominion, inside the towering command spires of the Dominion High Command, silence gripped the war chamber. Dozens of high-ranking officials stood frozen, staring at the tactical display. A single fleet marker had vanished. Not weakened, not scattered, erased. Replay it. One of the generals demanded. The footage looped. Again and again. Each time, the result was the same. The most advanced warship in the sector, gone in under an hour. No survivors. No counterattack. No explanation. This is fabricated, another officer said quickly. It has to be. Sensor manipulation. Psychological warfare. Then explain the wreckage, came the reply. Because it was already being confirmed. Long-range probes sent to the battle site return only debris fields, twisted metal, shattered hulls, and fragments of Dominion insignia drifting in the void. There were no human casualties, not a single destroyed vessel. They were supposed to be myths, someone whispered. No one answered. Within hours, reports began flooding in. Outposts near the frontier had gone silent. Patrol fleets had vanished. Supply convoys failed to arrive. Every missing unit shared one detail. No distress signal, no warning, just disappearance. They are moving, said a strategist from the Strategic Analysis Division, his voice tight with unease. Fast, faster than our tracking systems can handle. Where? The Chancellor demanded. The strategist hesitated. Everywhere. Panic didn't erupt all at once. It spread, slow, infectious, like a sickness. At first, it was confined to military circles. Commanders spoke in hushed tones. Orders became cautious. Fleets were reinforced. Then the rumors leaked. Civilian networks picked up fragments of the truth. A fleet destroyed. Entire patrol routes gone. Whispers of an enemy that couldn't be seen, only felt. Across core worlds, citizens began to ask questions. And for the first time in centuries, the Dominion had no answers. There goes, one report claimed. No, another countered. They're worse. In the outer systems, where control was weaker, fear turned into chaos. Colonies began evacuating. Trade routes collapsed. Local governors declared emergency protocols, sealing planetary defenses and cutting off communication with neighboring systems. Some didn't wait. Some ran. And then came the recordings. Recovered fragments from destroyed outposts. Grainy, incomplete, terrifying. A Dominion patrol ship drifting, its interior dark, emergency lights flickering. The recording device shakes as a crew member moves through the corridor. They came out of nowhere. The voice whispers. No warning, no signal, no. A sound interrupts him. Metal scraping. Slow. Deliberate. He turns. The camera catches a glimpse. A figure. Tall. Armored. Motionless. Watching. The recording cuts. Another clip. Planetary defense grid. Alarms blaring. Operators shouting over each other. They're inside the perimeter. That's impossible. The shields. They are bypassing everything. A bright flash fills the screen. Then darkness. Each recording told the same story. Different locations. Different victims. Same outcome. Same fear. Back in the Dominion's core, the truth was becoming impossible to deny. This wasn't a single fleet. This wasn't a random attack. This was coordinated, strategic, relentless. They are not probing us, the Chancellor said slowly, his voice heavy. They are dismantling us. Silence followed, because no one could argue. Emergency orders were issued. Fleets were mobilized. Entire armadas prepared for deployment. For the first time in its history, the Dominion of Raal was going to war on a full scale. Not against rebels, not against rivals, but against something older, something forgotten, something that had been waiting. And as the Dominion gathered its strength, far beyond their borders, in the cold darkness between stars, more human ships were appearing. Not built, not launched, revealed, as if they had always been there. Hidden, watching, preparing. The first fleet had been small. A test, a message. What came next would be something else entirely. The Dominion did what it had always done. It escalated. Across hundreds of systems, the Dominion of Raal unleashed its full military might. Shipyards ignited with activity. War fleets assembled in numbers not seen in centuries. Entire armadas, each capable of conquering civilizations, were deployed toward the outer sectors. This was no longer containment. This was extermination. At the center of it all, the Dominion High Command finalized a unified doctrine. Engage with overwhelming force. Control the battlefield. Crush the enemy through superior technology and coordination. It had worked for 1,000 years. It would work again. The first major engagement took place in the Karatha Expanse. 3 Dominion armadas, over 200 warships, entered formation, spreading across the system in a perfect grid of control. Defense screens led. Targeting arrays synchronized. Every angle covered. They were ready. They were prepared. They were wrong. The humans did not meet them head-on. They didn't form battle lines. They didn't announce their presence. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the Dominion supply convoy vanished. Not destroyed. Gone. No explosion. No signal. Just absence. What happened? A commander demanded. Unknown, came the reply. They were there, and then... Find them. Sensors scanned the region. Nothing. No energy signatures. No debris. No trace. Then another report came in. A fuel depot on the edge of the system, obliterated. No incoming fleet detected. No warning. They are avoiding engagement, one strategist said. They are targeting our infrastructure. That's not warfare, another snapped. That's effective. The realization came too late. Within minutes, the Dominion formation began to fracture. Communication relays failed. Navigation systems glitched. Targeting networks desynchronized. Ships that had entered battle as a unified force were now isolated, blind to one another, cut off from coordination. And that's when humanity struck. They appeared inside the formation, not from the edges, not from deep space, from within. Small groups of ships emerging like phantoms between Dominion vessels. No warp signatures, no detectable entry. Just they're inside our perimeter. How did they get past the sensors? They didn't, a trembling voice replied. They were never detected. The attacks were surgical, precise, brutal. Human ships didn't waste time exchanging fire. They targeted critical systems, command vessels, communication hubs, shield generators, fuel reserves. Every strike crippled the Dominion further. They're dismantling us piece by piece, someone whispered. A Dominion battleship turned to engage a human squadron. Too slow. By the time its weapons locked on, its engines were gone. Moments later, its core detonated. They are not fighting a war, a strategist said, his voice hollow. They are taking us apart. Panic spread through the fleet. Ships began to break formation, attempting to regroup. That made it worse, because the moment they moved independently, they became targets. Human vessels hunted them, one by one, relentless, unstoppable. They don't follow engagement protocols. They are not responding to surrender signals. They're ignoring our fleet hierarchy. Because they don't care, someone said quietly. And that was the truth. Humanity wasn't here to negotiate, wasn't here to conquer territory through diplomacy or intimidation. They weren't playing by the rules of galactic warfare. They had rewritten them. Within an hour, the Karatha Expanse was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. Burning wreckage drifted between shattered fleets. The Dominion armadas, once symbols of absolute power, were gone, destroyed, not in a single overwhelming strike, but in 1,000 calculated cuts. Across the galaxy, the reports continued. Different systems, same pattern, supply lines erased, shipyard sabotage, defense grids turned against themselves, human fleets appearing where they shouldn't exist, striking, vanishing, returning stronger. They are learning, said an analyst from the strategic division. No, came the reply. They already know. For the first time in its long history, the Dominion of Ryal was facing an enemy it did not understand, an enemy that did not fear them, an enemy that could not be predicted, an enemy that did not want victory. They wanted something else, and whatever it was, they were getting closer. The Dominion had always controlled war from a distance. Drones, orbital strikes, automated legions. Their soldiers rarely touched the battlefield. They didn't need to. For centuries, war had been clean, efficient, predictable. Humanity changed that. The first confirmed ground engagement came from the industrial world of Chorus 9, a heavily fortified planet deep within the Dominion of Raal. It was not supposed to fall. Planetary shields covered the entire surface. Orbital defenses could vaporize incoming fleets before they reached the atmosphere. Millions of automated units stood ready to repel any invasion. It should have been untouchable. The attack began without warning. Not from above, from within. Unauthorized signals detected in lower atmosphere. Impossible. Shields are intact. They didn't come through the shields. Then where did they? The answer came seconds later. Human drop units appeared across the planet. Not descending. Not breaking through defenses. Already there. Hidden. Embedded. Activated. Cities erupted into chaos. Industrial sectors went dark as power grids failed simultaneously across entire continents. Communication network collapsed. Defense systems turned against their own operators. And then the soldiers arrived. They didn't march. They didn't announce themselves. They emerged from smoke, from shadows, from places no one had been watching. They're inside the perimeter. How many? We don't know. That was the problem. There was no clear front line, no invasion wave, no visible army, just humans. The first Dominion ground unit encountered them in Sector 12. Automated drones, precision-controlled, fully armed, advanced through the ruins of a manufacturing district. Their sensors detected movement. Targets acquired. Weapons charged. They fired. The humans didn't fall. They moved. Fast. Too fast. Closing the distance before the drones could recalibrate. Then the drones were gone. Torn apart. Disabled. Crushed. They're engaging in close combat, a commander said, disbelief in his voice. Why would they? The feed cut. Another recording surfaced, this time from a surviving officer. His voice was shaking. They don't retreat. We surrounded them. We had them boxed in. A pause. Heavy breathing. They charged us. The Dominion had faced countless species. Some fought bravely. Some fought intelligently. Some fought desperately. Humans fought differently. They adapted. Instantly. Every encounter made them more efficient. Every battle made them more dangerous. They learned tactics mid-fight, adjusted strategies in real time, exploited weaknesses before the Dominion even realized they existed. They are predicting our movements, one officer reported. No, came the reply. They are forcing them. The worst were the shock units. Heavily armored, silent, precise. They didn't just eliminate targets. They hunted them, tracked retreating forces through collapsed cities, cut off escape routes, anticipated fallback positions. There was no escape. They're everywhere. They're in the walls. They're static. Chorus 9 burned for weeks. Entire district reduced to ash. Dominion forces, trained for controlled, distant warfare, were overwhelmed. They weren't prepared for this. For an enemy that didn't rely on machines, didn't fear casualties, didn't hesitate. They fight like it's personal, one report noted. And that was the most unsettling part. Because it was. When the fires finally died, the Dominion flag was gone. In its place, a new symbol rose above the ruins. Simple, unmistakable, human. Across the galaxy, more planets began to fall. Not slowly, not after prolonged sieges. Quickly, efficiently, inevitably. Each victory followed the same pattern. Disruption, isolation, infiltration, elimination. The Dominion was not losing territory. It was being taken apart. And for the first time, its people began to understand something far more terrifying than defeat. This wasn't conquest. This wasn't expansion. This was something else. Something deeper. Something older. Something that had been waiting a very long time. The question had been building since the first fleet fell. Why? Why did humanity fight like this? Why no negotiations? Why no demands? Why only destruction? At the center of the Dominion of Raal, deep beneath layers of restricted data and forgotten code, answers began to surface. Not because they were found, because they could no longer be hidden. Supreme Chancellor Varco stood alone in the sealed archives of the Dominion High Command. He had overridden protocols that had never been broken. Security systems resisted him. Data locks failed to open. Entire sectors of the archive attempted to erase themselves the moment access was granted, as if the truth itself was trying to stay buried. Authorize full retrieval. Varco's ordered. Warning. The system replied. Accessing this data violates ancestral restriction codes. Do it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered. Old file surfaced. Ancient. Corrupted. But intact enough. Images appeared. Grainy. Blackened by time. Worlds on fire. Cities collapsing under orbital bombardment. Massive fleets, unfamiliar in design, burning in the void. These are not Dominion vessels, Varco's murmured. No, the system replied quietly. They are not. A new file opened. Text scrolled across the display. Fragments of a report written thousands of years ago. Subject, human expansion. Threat level, uncontrolled. Conclusion, immediate action required. Varco's felt his throat tighten. Continue. More data surfaced. More records. More truth. Humanity had not been a myth. They had been real. Young. Rapidly evolving. Expanding faster than any species before them. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the most advanced. But they were something else. Unstoppable. They adapted exponential rates. One ancient report stated. They learned from every conflict. They improve faster than we can contain them. Another file opened. More direct. More final. Recommendation. Total eradication. Varco's froze. No, he whispered. The system continued. Unfeeling. Unstoppable. Joint operation authorized by Elder Coalition. All human colonies to be neutralized. Survivors to be eliminated. All records of species' existence to be purged. Silence filled the chamber. The Dominion had not defeated humanity. They had exterminated them. Systematically. Deliberately. Completely. Entire planets burned. Populations wiped out. History erased. Not because humanity had committed some great crime, but because they had been. Too dangerous. They were going to surpass us, Varco said slowly. Yes, the system replied. Another file surfaced. This one different. Personal. A transmission. Recovered from a human world moments before its destruction. The video flickered to life. A human stood before the camera. Wounded. Exhausted. But unbroken. You think this ends us, the human said, voice rough. You think if you burn enough worlds, kill enough of us, erase our name. A faint, tired smile crossed his face. You don't understand what we are. The transmission glitched. Static filled the screen. Then one final line broke through. We survive. The recording ended. Varco stared at the screen. At the ruins. At the truth. They didn't go extinct. He whispered. No, the system said. They were hunted. And somehow, someway, they had survived. Hidden. scattered, waiting. For centuries, the Dominion had believed itself the rightful ruler of the galaxy, the inheritor of order, the keeper of stability. But none of it was true. Their empire was built on ashes, on genocide, on a crime so complete it had erased an entire species from history. Until now. This isn't a war, Varco said, his voice hollow. The system did not respond. It didn't need to, because the truth was clear. Humanity had not returned to conquer. They had not returned to rule. They had returned to finish something. They didn't see it coming, not because the Dominion of Raal lacked senses, not because their defenses were weak, but because humanity had already learned how to bypass everything they relied on. The capital system, Vila Prime, was the most fortified region in the galaxy. Layered defenses stretched across millions of kilometers. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons capable of destroying fleets before they could even emerge from warp. Planetary shields shimmered like a second atmosphere, impenetrable and absolute. No enemy had ever breached it. No enemy had ever tried. Until now. The first sign was not an explosion, not an alert, not even a signal. It was silence. Entire defense arrays went offline simultaneously. No damage. No attack signatures. Just gone. Inside the war chamber of the Dominion High Command, alarms erupted seconds later. "What just happened?" one commander shouted. "Orbital grid is down." "That's impossible. Those systems are isolated. They are not responding. Controls are locked out." Vico stood at the center of it all, unmoving. He already knew. "They are here," he said quietly, as if the universe itself responded to his words. The sky broke. Human warships appeared in orbit, not emerging from hyperspace, not warping in, just appearing. Massive, silent, unstoppable. Panic spread instantly. Enemy fleet detected. How did they get past the outer defenses? They didn't cross them. They're already inside. Orbital platforms attempted to engage. Weapons charged. Target locks initiated. Then toned. "Wait! What are they doing?" "They are targeting us." The Dominion's own defenses opened fire. On their own fleet. Explosions lit the sky. Massive warships, once symbols of absolute dominance, were torn apart by the very systems meant to protect them. They've taken control of the defense grid. "Shut it down." "We can't. It's no longer responding." Humanity had not breached the defenses. They had become them. Dropships followed. Thousands of them, cutting through the atmosphere like falling stars. On the surface, chaos erupted. Cities plunged into darkness. Communication networks collapsed. Military coordination disintegrated within minutes. They disabled everything. They're inside every system. How is this possible? Because they had planned this. For centuries, human strike teams deployed across Vila Prime. Not randomly, not recklessly, strategically. Power grids, command centers, defense hubs, government complexes. Every critical point was hit simultaneously. "They are not attacking blindly," one officer whispered. "They know exactly where to strike." Of course they did. This wasn't just another world. This was the heart of the empire that had tried to erase them. And they remembered everything. Inside the war chamber, panic had turned into desperation. Admirals shouted conflicting orders. Systems failed faster than they could be repaired. Every attempt to regain control collapsed instantly. "It's over," someone said. "No," another snapped. "We still have one option." All eyes turned to Varco's. The Chancellor stood in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Prepare planetary annihilation protocol." The room froze. "Chancellor," one of the generals said carefully, "that will destroy the entire planet." "Yes," Varco's replied. "Billions of lives. Their own people. Their own capital. Gone. If we cannot hold it," he continued, his voice cold, "then we will deny it." For a moment, no one moved. Then, the doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the chamber. Guards were thrown aside. Weapons raised. Then lowered. Because standing in the doorway was a human, not armored like the others. Not hidden behind machinery, just a man. Behind him, two soldiers in dark combat suits stood motionless. silent, watching. Varkos recognized a face instantly, not from reports, not from battle, from the archives, a survivor, a descendant of the ones they had tried to erase. The human stepped forward, calm, unhurried, certain. The room fell completely silent. Varko straightened, his voice steady, controlled. What do you want? The human stopped a few steps away, met his gaze, and smiled, not with anger, not with rage, with certainty. One thing, he said, a single word, justice. Outside, the capital burned, and inside, the end had already begun. Vela Prime fell before dawn, not with a final battle, not with a last stand, but with silence. Inside the shattered command tower, the leaders of the Dominion of Raal were gone. No negotiations, no trials, no speeches, just absence. Supreme Chancellor Varkos, his admirals, his war council, all erased in a single night. The war did not end with victory. It ended with completion. Across the planet, fires still burned. Smoke rose from the ruins of a once invincible empire. The towering spires of Vela Prime, symbols of absolute control, stood broken, their foundations cracked, their dominance reduced to ash. Dominion soldiers who had survived the assault moved cautiously through the streets, weapons lowered, not because they had been ordered to, but because there was nothing left to fight. Human forces did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They did not claim glory. They moved with purpose, securing what remained, separating those who resisted from those who did not. Prisoners were taken, not slaughtered. Civilians were spared, not targeted, because this was never about destruction. It was about balance. And then the transmission began. Every screen across the galaxy activated at once. From the smallest outpost to the most distant colony, every species, every civilization, every survivor saw the same image. A human stood at the center of the frame, armor-worn, battle-scarred, unmoving. Behind him, the ruins of Vela Prime stretched into the horizon. His voice was calm, measured, final. The Dominion is no more. Across the galaxy, silence followed. Your fleets are gone. Your leaders are gone. Your empire has ended. No emotion, no triumph, just truth. For centuries, you ruled through fear. You erased our history. You tried to erase us. A pause. The human stepped closer to the camera, his eyes steady, unshaken, and yet we survived. Across countless worlds, people watched in stillness, because now they understood. Humanity does not forget, he continued. Humanity does not forgive. Another pause. He let the weight of those words settle. But we do understand. The screen shifted. Images appeared. Dominion soldiers surrendering. Weapons laid down. Civilians being escorted to safety. This was never about conquest. We do not seek to rule you. We do not seek to replace you. The human looked directly into the lens. We came for what was taken. The image returned to him, still, unmoving, unyielding. And now it is done. A final silence. What happens next? A slight tilt of his head. Is up to you. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, the shockwave spread. Worlds once bound by Dominion rule found themselves free for the first time in centuries. Some celebrated. Some feared what would come next. Some collapsed into chaos. But none dared to challenge humanity, because now the truth was known. Not the myth, not the legend. The truth. Humanity had been hunted. Humanity had been erased. And humanity had survived. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as something far more dangerous. A reminder that even the strongest empires can fall. That even erased histories can return. That even extinction is not always the end. And far beyond the edges of known space, where the stars burned cold and silent, new human fleets waited, not for war, but for whatever came next. Because one thing was now certain, the galaxy would never forget them again.